attractiveness and beauty interchangeably, but actually they are two very different things. We think that we are more beautiful or better than we actually are.
Don't tell me that, Andrea. Don't judge a book by its cover, but then how else are you going to pick it up from the shelf?
Some research proved that women, when they wore makeup and smiled, were more likely to be approached and they were judged more favorably. Fundamentally, self-love is mostly about managing our inner critic.
There's truth to the idea that men make worse decisions when exposed to female beauty. So the question is, are we better than men?
I am Andrea, and together with my co-host Ana, in this episode, everyone is beautiful. Welcome to Sonder Characters.
When I looked into the definition of beauty, I came across Vivian Diller. She's a psychologist and author. She painted a picture of beauty by comparing it to attractiveness, and it really spoke to me. She says that beauty is a rigid, static physical image, is a fluid, variable psychological experience, one that moves from the inside out and back again. Beauty can be inherited, photoshopped, or surgically attained, but attractiveness develops, evolves over time, and can be ageless.
I think it's important to note here that we use attractiveness and beauty interchangeably, but actually they are two very different things.
What's your perception of beauty?
This is a very good question, mostly because I studied art. And when you study art, in particular visual arts, you learn how to focus on the beauty, for example, in a painting. And you learn how to decipher the messages that the artist intended to deliver through their representation. That has had a lot of impact of how I view beauty. A lot of the things I find beautiful in life have got nothing to do with the appearance of that visual representation, but a feeling that I acquire when I look at it. More specifically, what does it bring out in me? Because I remember crying in front of an Andy Warhol painting in a museum in Berlin, and many times I cried reading autobiographies. In the more recent history, I read Viola Davis's autobiography, and her childhood story is filled with pain and trauma, but the depiction and the truthfulness in it was so beautifully written. And because I look at the world in this way, I find attractiveness very interesting. Also, sometimes for me, it has absolutely nothing to do with one's physical appearance. What about you?
For me, beauty is relative. I think I can recognize and appreciate physical beauty, but I don't think anything compares with a beautiful soul or a beautiful energy in a person. Sometimes I find objects, paintings, or places beautiful, but I feel like it is because they speak to me in a certain way. The way you said about, looking at a painting and bringing all these emotions out of you. It's pretty much the same for me. If I look at the painting, it's because it tells a story.
Yeah.
The notion of beauty is very intriguing. So I was very intrigued to see how it began. Who invented the word beauty, or how did it all start? When did we start having this conception of you are beautiful and you're not? According to the Washington Post, it all began 2,400 years ago in Greece and Rome, when the Western standards of beauty were set. The chairman of the Greek and Roman department at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York says that the Greeks knew there was more to a person than just a face. Beauty was considered an excellence, like honesty or bravery, and physical beauty was important, but it had to be coupled with goodness of spirit as well. So beauty in itself, just a physical appearance, wasn't sufficient.
In a very old ode, Plato talks about the 3 wishes of every Greek: to be healthy, to be beautiful, and to become rich by honest means. So obviously being beautiful was a very important part of that culture. But the physical beauty by Greek standards consisted of having harmonious proportion in your face. So the perfect Greek face was divided into 3 sections, from hairline to the eyes, from eyes to the upper lip, and from upper lip to chin. And the ideal face was 2/3 as wide as it was high. It wasn't only just important, they actually had a logical, mathematical way of defining what the beauty standard is. When I was reading that, I actually remember when I started drawing in art school, this is actually one of the first few lessons that you learn when you are trying to draw portraits. You learn about this division of the face.
Symmetry is one of the things people find attractive or beautiful in a person. even without us really realizing, is more subconscious than conscious. So Andre, I have a saying I love to use, which says, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder.
Expand.
Apparently has a literal meaning, which means that beauty doesn't exist on its own, but it's created by the observers. So I think the perception of beauty is subjective. And I think we both agree to this, Andre, because we have different opinions on what is beautiful. What I find very appealing or very attractive, you might think it's just ordinary or unappealing. And the reason I'm saying this is because it's interesting how we don't really find our exes attractive. I don't think your exes were that good looking, for instance, and the feeling is kind of mutual.
I'll tell you what else is mutual. Once they become our exes, we both agree on where they stand on the scale of attractiveness.
Agreed. So I read an article from the Association of Psychological Science, which discusses this saying that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. And I took something away from this, specifically that in myth, beautiful women are disruptive of men's reason, even causing them to go to war. The power. And I thought to myself, no, men will do no such thing. But guess what? The study conducted by a pair of McMaster University researchers found that there's truth to the idea that men make worse decisions when exposed to female beauty.
I love this. Tell me more.
And so the results from looking at photographs of attractive women caused a significant increase in delay discounting in men. Apparently, this behavior and tendency is also found in addicts and people with impaired or lack of self-control.
Wait. So you're basically saying that when exposed to pictures of females who are beautiful, men make worse decisions.
I would like to tell you that's not correct, but it is. That's what they found in their research. When exposed to beautiful women, some research found that men tended to prefer smaller, immediate reward over a large delayed one, which I think, Andre, kind of explains why some men are tempted to risk it all just for a short time reward. What was extremely interesting, because they did this research both on men and women, and when they did it on women, viewing attractive men did not influence their decisions. So the question is, are we better than men? Andre, please don't answer. I mean, research is research, you know? So Andre, between the two of us, while I failed to see how this research proves or disproves the idea that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, it kind of made me laugh, and I thought it was imperative I share it. So I really hope you have better research, Andre.
I'm very satisfied with this amount of insight, by the way. The saying of beauty is in the eye of the beholder made me think about an old Dove commercial. The whole point of this commercial is that there was a group of women and they were asked to describe themselves in front of a camera. And there was a forensic artist behind a curtain who was drawing their portraits based on their self-description. Before all of this happened, the women were asked each to socialize with a stranger, which in turn had to describe the woman that they were speaking to beforehand to the forensic artist. At the end, the women are shown two portraits of themselves. The first one is based on their own description, and the second one is based on the description of that stranger. The description of the stranger produced much more beautiful images, and the commercial ends with, "You are much more beautiful than you think." And I just wanted to bring this up because actually, according to science, this is wrong, and it's not how it works. But it made an impact because many times women do seem to view themselves less beautiful than they actually are. And I think that's a very common experience. But according to science, that's not really what happens. We think that we are more beautiful or better than we actually are. So we have this inflated perception of ourselves, including on the physical appearance. This is a manifestation of a general phenomenon that the psychology calls self-enhancement.
Don't tell me that, Andre. So wait a second, women that don't see themselves as beautiful, first of all, they are right, but even more, they are not that attractive. So they are even less beautiful than they think they are.
Apparently, yes. I'm sorry to break it to you.
This is food for thought. Destroy my last ending dream.
Isn't it the whole point of this podcast? So the way they proved this self-enhancement bias exists was based on a series of experiments done by two researchers, one from University of Chicago and the other one from University of Virginia. And in this experiment, they took pictures of study participants And using a software, they produced 2 more versions of the picture. One version in which they were more attractive and one picture in which they were less attractive. The participants were told that they would be presented with a series of images, including their original picture, and the 2 images that were modified, but they didn't tell them what they've done with the image. They just said that it was enhanced. And then the participants were asked to identify the unmodified picture. Every single time, the participant selected the image that was more attractive. And because these researchers wanted to be really sure of their hypotheses, and they wanted to prove that people only display this bias for themselves, but not for strangers, they did something else. So they morphed pictures of strangers that the participants in the study have met previously. And when they were asked to pick the picture of the strangers, each time the participants picked the original. So in other words, the participants of the study were better able to identify the original picture of a stranger than they were able to select that original picture for themselves. There's a really good explanation for it as well. So they say that people can only recognize objects more quickly when those objects match their mental representation. So if people truly believe that an attractively enhanced picture is actually their own, they should recognize that picture more quickly.
This is so intriguing.
I thought this was really groundbreaking, because how many times do we look in the mirror and we see all our flaws? I just laughed when I read this study because I was thinking, gosh, how do people view me then?
Yeah. Well, Andrea, I looked into what science says about beauty and what influences our perception. I mean, the reason I even looked into this is because you see extremely beautiful women that are so insecure. They find themselves so full of flaws. So what influences their perception then? And what influences our perception of beauty when we are looking outwards, so the people around us? The question they were trying to answer is if we really have a type. So for instance, why do we find some people beautiful and others not that good looking or don't pick our interest? They were talking about 2 different studies that were conducted. One where people rate faces for attractiveness on the website testmybrain.org. The conclusion they reached is that people generally agree that symmetrical faces are better looking, exactly what you said at the beginning. So that was one, and other factors might account for around 50% of the consensus on beauty. The second part of the study, they were trying to find out the other 50%. So the researchers studies the facial preferences of pairs of identical twins and pairs of fraternal twins. They wanted to do this experiment because twins and fraternal twins, they grow up in the same environment, they have the same genes, so essentially they might be having the same idea of beauty. Now, the conclusion from this second study was that 50% of people's preferences for faces are unique to them. We both have twins, Andre. Yet that doesn't mean we'll have the same preference. It is unique to us. Who we find attractive is more strongly influenced by our life experiences. So if we take a face and we pair it with positive information, then that face looks more attractive. And any other face that is similar to the one that we find attractive will automatically become attractive, and vice versa. This second part of the study also answers the question why sometimes we don't like certain names is because we correlate them with particular experience from the past.
So I like a lot of Annas in my life, probably because of you. And I love the name.
Exactly. And of course, I like Andrea. But there are some names I simply don't like because I associate that particular name with a person from my past. Now, Andrea, do you think we can increase our beauty or level of attractiveness?
I have a few ideas. They normally involve some cost and sometimes some needles. I was thinking about Botox, fillers, and so on and so forth. But actually, makeup does a lot of that as well, doesn't it?
It does. I came across this blog called 1883 Lifestyle, and it goes through simple tips to enhance our natural beauty, because they say beauty products can only give us a temporary glow and glamour. But if we truly want to enhance our beauty, then we need to work for it. Of course, I was intrigued because I like to work. So they say that if you love your body, it will reflect through your skin. And I so agree, Andre. If you're happy inside, you'll glow on the outside. They go through 6 of them, but I picked my favorite 4. And the first one is to drink a lot of water. What I liked about these suggestions is that they kind of explain why and what difference it makes. They say that dehydration makes wrinkles apparent.
Of course it does.
So it prevents your body from doing the things it should do. For an adult, drinking at least 2 to 3 liters of water is a must. Usually, if I don't have enough time to drink lots of water before sleep, I tend to do it while I'm in bed, just before I fall asleep. But what they say is that drinking water before sleeping or after dinner will not get absorbed. Andre, why?
You have to do it throughout the day. Maybe you need to implement your emotional support water bottle. Mine goes with me everywhere.
Mine goes with me everywhere as well. But if I need an extra liter by the end of the day, I'll just drink it before sleep. And seems like it's a waste of my time.
And water. The second thing on the list, I kind of love-hate it, and I roll my eyes at it a little bit. So the second thing on this list is that you should exercise daily. I think we all know that in theory. If we want to look good, we kind of need to sweat it out, because around 20% of elimination of toxin occurs through perspiration. Exercising also releases endorphins, the happy hormone, and we all know that being happy makes you look more beautiful. A no-brainer, really.
Yeah, I think the exercise one, it's well advertised. One that was on the list and was a bit intriguing because I wasn't aware of it was eat orange foods.
Does Aperol count?
I hope so, because I tend to have that quite often. So apparently eating dark orange foods can help us look good because they contain high beta carotene that helps warm your complexion. A few examples: sweet potatoes, peaches, and carrots. And they also contain vitamin A, which is fat soluble.
Well, there is another obvious one on this list, which is to get a good night's sleep. Because resting or sleeping for at least 7 to 8 hours is very important. Whilst you sleep, your cells renew themselves, and lack of sleep can slow down the cell renewal, and it can make you look tired, which in result can make you look less attractive. They say that if you have trouble sleeping, try to relax or get a good massage, or you can also try some deep breathing exercises. I like this advice. I often struggle with sleep, and meditation and deep breathing exercising really help relax my body. I also think lack of sleep, it doesn't just make you look worse, but I think it also has a huge impact on your mental health.
And also how your brain performs.
Yeah, for sure.
This idea that we can increase our beauty or attractiveness by getting enough sleep, I actually looked into it. I found an experiment conducted by a group of Swedish and Dutch researchers in which observers rated the attractiveness as well as health of participants who were photographed both after a period of sleep deprivation and after a good night's sleep. This was done back in 2010, but what they found, which was not surprising, is that individuals who were sleep deprived were rated significantly less attractive than those who were rested. And they were also rated less healthy. What came out of this experiment is also that there are the emotions we project through our faces. Positive emotions increase attractiveness. So along with beauty, sleep, and drinking enough water, seems like the emotions we express on our face can also increase our attractiveness. And we are drawn to those who smile, for example.
Oh, I love this. I read something in relation to smiling. So some research done in 2008 proved that women, when they wore makeup and smiled at men upon entering a bar, were more likely to be approached and they were judged more favorably. And I think that's very true. I am also more drawn to people who are more smiley.
I know, because they seem more inviting.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, Andrea, I came across a video on Facebook. This young lady who regarded herself as below average looking girl decided to take on a simple 30-day experiment to enhance her beauty. And I really wanted to talk about this one. So essentially, she had to spend 5 minutes a day with herself, saying words of affirmation while looking in the mirror. And from memory, some of the affirmations were along the lines of, I am beautiful, I love my face, I adore my eyes, my hair is beautiful. And she recorded this experiment by taking daily pictures. Andre, as I was looking at this video, I could visually see an improvement in this young lady's face expression or beauty. It wasn't that she was smiling a lot more, but as the pictures were rolling, with each day that was passing by, visually I could see that she was more beautiful. And she also mentioned that she feels more beautiful, she feels more attractive, she's more confident. It was something so radiant about her. And the fact that she only spent 5 minutes a day with herself, convincing herself that she's a lot more beautiful and finding reasons to believe she's beautiful had such a huge impact in just 30 days. I thought this was such an intriguing experiment.
I actually really love this. It's such a good way to express self-love. And sometimes when we don't know what self-love is, we can actually teach ourselves how to do that. This is obviously not on your list of how to become more attractive, but it's such an important part of it. The more you love yourself, the more you radiate that positive energy outside. And I think that makes you happier. And in return, that makes you more attractive. This idea of self-love has been such a huge topic of conversation on social media for the past few years. But in psychology, the scientific term for self-love is actually called a self-positivity bias. And I love the fact that it's a bias. And the way it's defined is the way people rate themselves as possessing more positive personality traits and displaying more positive behaviors than the average population. Fundamentally, self-love is mostly about managing our inner critic, so we can develop a more nuanced view of our failures and also appreciate all our effort and personal growth in a kind and loving and respecting way towards ourselves. Enhancing our self-love has been documented in psychology for so long, and there's actual evidence that it improves our life because it reduces anxiety and improves our mental health. It increases our confidence and actually can even give us a better sleep. And from what I recall from any research I've done for this episode, these are all traits of really attractive people.
I kind of see the correlation between self-love and attractiveness. When you love yourself, you're less likely to judge yourself very harshly, or, you tend to be more kind to yourself. And that's why it reduces anxiety.
Let's talk about it. There's another saying that I like that says, don't judge a book by its cover.
I like this one. When they say don't judge a book by its cover, but then how else are you going to pick it up from the shelf? I came across a new study at the University of British Columbia, and they say that attractive people are actually judged more accurately, at least closer to a subject's own self-assessments, than less attractive people, because it draws others to go beyond the initial impression. They say that people do judge a book by its cover, but a beautiful cover prompts a closer reading. I kind of understand that, because initially you're attracted to a person, but you want to see if there's some consistency, not just a pretty face. You want to make sure it's pretty inside as well.
And I think that happens not just in romantic relationships, that happens in the workplace so much of the time.
And in friendships.
Yes. And as much as we want to think that we don't judge people based on their looks, we do it all the time, and very often unconsciously. It was proven over and over and over again by science that attractive people are less likely to be found guilty by stimulated juries and more likely to get reduced punishments. People tend to vote for more attractive politicians and even give more attention to better-looking children. This has got real-world implications because we tend to think that attractive people have got better moral attributes, that they are more capable, that they are more efficient, they are morally superior. And they very often would be the ones who get better jobs, promotions, bonuses in the workplace. This is part of a much bigger conversation because it's very connected with some of the root causes for ageism, ableism, sexism, racism.
It's not a fair world, but in the same time, there are a lot of not that good looking people that are in power, and a lot of good people that are very smart and they have gotten very far. So when looks fail you, you find something else to exceed it.
Not everyone wins the DNA lottery in life. So a big part of this conversation is understanding that if you are a good looking person, you also have a lot of privilege.
You do, but it's a blessing and a curse. Because in some circumstances, you might think you're just a pretty face, and they might discount your intellectual abilities. It is not a fair world for beautiful people, as it is not a fair world for less attractive people. I don't think that has stopped many average-looking people to succeed in one way or another. It's so much more to life than just having a pretty face, because once you get in a room full of people, your looks can only take you that far. Now, Andrea, should we see how other people define or perceive beauty?
And I'm going to start with the quote. Everything has its beauty, but not everyone sees it.
100%. The English philosopher David Hume wrote, "Beauty is no quality in things themselves. It exists merely in the mind which contemplates them, and each mind perceives a different beauty.
Yeah, I like that.
The artist in you, Andre, hit me up.
I will. Uzbekistan painter Abdulhak Abdullayev devoted a lifetime to painting portraits of people who created beauty or that he felt that they had an inner beauty. And he concluded that every person is a flower with its unique aroma of personal charm. Beauty of mind is worn on the face. Physical beauty and inner harmony combined produce an effect that nature alone cannot. He found this to be true regardless of his subject, age, or station.
I think that's wonderful. Just a pretty face is not enough. I found one on Reddit. This person says, I knew a girl once who was properly gorgeous, but had the personality of a viper. I just wasn't interested, but a lot of guys were fawning over her, and she loved it.
Of course she did.
Someone defined beauty as a collection of features and aspects that inexplicably produce a sense of satisfaction through pleasant aesthetics.
Interesting way of formulating that. A sense of satisfaction. They are right. It is a sense of satisfaction when you look at something beautiful. I went on Reddit after doing this philosophical research, and someone said that genuinely kind people are the most beautiful to me. As I get older, I've started seeing the beauty in good, kind people and placing it far above their physical appearance. This spoke to me. I understand that.
Me too. And I agree with the fact that as we get older, we see beauty slightly different.
Absolutely. And then someone else defined beauty as a combination of looks, personality, and intelligence. And I had questions about this. Is it in this specific order?
We will never know. Someone said that beauty is love and light and kindness. The most beautiful people I know radiate from within. You know, when you meet someone and at first you don't think they are very attractive, and then once you get to know them, they become more attractive because they are so wonderful. That's beauty. The amount of times I went through this, you know, you meet someone and you're like, yeah, average, whatever, not interested. And then you start talking to them and there is some sort of vibe, there is some sort of energy, and you're like, oh my God, why are they so wonderful? And suddenly they just become beautiful in your eyes.
Don't I know that feeling very well?
You know, I think this was one of my favorite episodes, Andre. And I wanted to say, I don't say that often, but I say that very often. I think we only scrape the surface with this subject. There is so much more to beauty that is left undiscussed. I really enjoyed it. So if you had to describe beauty in a few words, what would you say?
I'm going to go on a philosophical tangent here, and I'm going to quote from Marcus Aurelius. Everything in any way beautiful has its beauty of itself, inherent and self-sufficient. Praise is no part of it.
I like that. I would also say a quote by Kate Angel. She says, outer beauty attracts, but inner beauty captivates.
Yeah.